Okay guys, Acura MDX. This is the newer generation model, 2009 plus I believe. We're going to be doing the power steering pressure line. Pressure line was leaking in the spot they typically leak, which is right up here at the crimp. Not a good deal because it leaks power steering fluid into the timing cover, which saturates eventually the timing belt, which is not a good deal. So I got a little head start already. Engine cover sits over here, obviously. Apologize about the noise. I'm trying to cool the block down actually. I got a fan going. Engine cover's got two little Phillips plastic screws in it. You turn them 90 degrees, you pull the engine cover off. First we're going to start off with the line, two 10mm bolts that secure the top of the pressure line down. I always remove those first, lift the line up, try to release some fluid. Now, empty the reservoir, okay? I have a little Mighty Vac suction puller. Very handy tool. Stick it in here, pull all the fluid out of the reservoir. Got the fluid sitting in a nice clean bucket in case I have to top it off with some of the reused fluid. But we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna pull this line up. It might come off while I'm filming here. Okay, that's the top of the line coming up. You don't want to start flinging the hose around everywhere. I have a ton of rags stuffed all down in there so they soak the fluid up, because you don't want even more fluid falling down into the timing cover. This is a timing belt engine. You get oil on a timing belt, not a good deal, guys. So we got the line disconnected up here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lift the vehicle up in the air. I'm going to start working on from the other side down by the rack and pinion. The line obviously mounts into the pump, and then you follow the line to the back side. The line connects to the rack and pinion over on the driver's side corner underneath the vehicle. There are some securement brackets along the way that we're going to have to release. In the meantime, I'm going to get started on lifting the vehicle. We'll touch back in a minute or two. Alright, so we are right next to the passenger tire. Now what we're doing is we're looking right under the body, and that piece right there is going to be the pressure switch on the pressure line. So we got to start by removing that connector. Once we remove that connector, the actual pressure switch is going to come off. We are going to be replacing that. You should be replacing that with any line that you do, any high pressure line. Now you can see the trail of power steering fluid down that hose. It's a good indicator that it was leaking at the top crimp. Now I see we have other issues here because it appears the whole front side of the engine is saturated in power steering fluid. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull one of those timing covers so I can see the belt, and I'm going to make sure the belt isn't completely soaked in power steering fluid. I mean, you can see it trailing off the mount there, so my guess is that it may have saturated the entire timing belt area. Hopefully not. That line runs, excuse me, to that pressure switch. Now we're underneath directly, and then we can see that line, if you can see it faintly in the middle there, comes over and attaches into the rack and pinion. It's not a great angle for shooting on the camera, but I think you get the general idea. For reference, that connector is a little push lock connector. It's got a tab at the top. I apologize about the unfocused camera lens here, but You just push on the back side of that long tab on the connector. It'll release the clip and then you pull back on the connector. Right now it is obviously off the pressure switch. That is what we were after. Pull it back, set it on the boot like I did so it's out of the way, and then continue disassembly. Alright guys, directly in the middle of your screen there, that is a mount that kind of sneaks up on people. Some people forget about it. Pulling on the line, wondering why it's not moving. That is a little 10mm bolt that holds down the line securement bracket. That needs to come off. A good way to do that, 10mm shallow socket with a swivel head. It is kind of tight, as you can see. It's kind of tucked up in there. I'm going to take that off. Just want to show you guys that. Alright, now if you can see this, I'm going to try to zoom in. There's one more tab, okay? And that tab is going to be on the left hand side of the middle of the subframe. I can't really see the nut just because of space confinement, but two tabs, both 10 mil. That one's even harder to get to, but again, a shallow 10 and a swivel, you should be able to get it out. Alright, so we're under the subframe area again. Now that, see, I'm going to show you, here's the rack and pinion. You got two hard lines that come in to the left-hand driver side of it. This line right here on the passenger side of the pinion portion of the rack, that is the flange nut that comes out that holds the line in. There's two ways you can do this. Get a line wrench, crack it loose, work it out slowly, or you can cut the line entirely, put a socket on it, and then use a socket to drive it out, because the new line is going to have, obviously, a new nut to thread into that pinion portion of the rack. So just wanted to show you guys that, just so you, for reference, so you know where under the vehicle I am on the left-hand side of the drive shaft, looking straight up at the rack and pinion. And it is tight, so it's a fun job. Alright, we're back up on the top. Now, I got the line disconnected from the rack down there. I want to pause and show you this. Now, I left this on by mistake, actually. I missed it, but this clamp sits back here against the back side of the engine, okay? Very important. This clamp needs to come off the old line by taking a little 10mm bolt out of it, spreading it, taking it off the original hose, and it needs to go back onto the new hose, okay? If you don't have this mounted on here, what's going to happen is this hose is going to be hooked up and it's going to start to chafe, and it's going to start to rub holes through plastic, harnesses, etc. There's a reason the bracket elevates the hose up over the back side of the engine, okay? So make sure this clamp goes back on. All the clamps have to be swapped, but this one, if any, don't miss this one, okay? Sits right back on the back side of the engine, just so you can get a visual. So the hose is completely free now. I'm going to send the hose down, and I pull them from the bottom. Some guys got different ways of doing them. I'm pull this one from the bottom. I'm going to send the new one up from the bottom. We are ready now to assemble the new hose. Alright guys, new line is in. This is going to be your most handy tool. I'm sure you know what these are. Crowfoot. Okay. That you can set right up on the line nut there, okay? It's a 14mm. Now what I did is I took this once I got it loose and set that on there, and then I just did circles with it to take off the line. That is the fastest way, unless you cut the line and put a socket on it. Being this is a new customer, I want to show them their old line. I don't want to show them a chopped up pressure line that I pulled off their car. So that being said, it is a pain in the ass, okay? Now what I was thinking is potentially you could take off this bracket and remove all that stuff, and it might give you a little bit more room to get your hand in there. But moral of the story is have some time if you're going to do this job, because it is not that fun. Okay, everything is reinstalled. The next step obviously is going to be to fill it with fluid. So I'm going to do that right now. Now use a funnel. I'm degreasing this thing, so I'm not super concerned about any spillage like that. And then we're going to have to get in, turn the wheel back and forth. So the way you're going to do this is fill the reservoir. Some will automatically trickle down, and then some will start to get caught in the reservoir like it is now. It's plumb full, like literally the fluid's right there. So now I'm going to get in without starting the car. Don't start the car. Turn the wheel all the way to the left, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Maybe do that back and forth 2-3 times. Okay. Come check the level again. It should settle a little bit lower in the reservoir, at which point you can put the cap on. Then you're going to start the vehicle, and you're going to turn the wheel all the way to one side. Don't crank it and hold it. That's what you do when you're trying to fine bleed it, okay? So you're going to crank it all the way over to one side, all the way to the other. Do that about 2 times. Then go the other way, crank it, hold it, etc., etc. We're not trying to starve the pump in the beginning of the bleeding process with the air pockets, okay? So it's always better to start lesser and then go to more when you're bleeding, and I'll elaborate on that on future videos. But don't just go in, start it up because the reservoir is full and crank it one direction. It's not healthy for the pump. So that's my 2 cents on that. I'm going to start it now. Well, actually I'm going to get in, turn the wheel around a few times, then start it, and then I'm going to bleed it. Alright guys, also never assume a job is done. Always lift the vehicle back up and double check your work. There's very simple things that can be missed, and then you give it to a customer and their assumption is, hey, it's good to go. And if it's not, that's how you lose customers. Alright, so I still have a light focusing on that flange, okay. Now here's the thing, I sprayed a ton of degreaser down here. Let me grab this light, we're going to turn the light up, excuse me. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to wipe that, then we're going to check it again and make sure. Like I said, never assume. I didn't wipe it up when I got done threading it in, which I should have, but I'm going to do now, and then we're going to watch it closely. Alright guys, I let it run for about 10 minutes. I just got finished degreasing it, blew everything off. Right now we can see 0 leaks, and I already checked up top. That's the O-ring seal up there, very unlikely to leak. So at this point, what I am going to say is job complete. Not a single drop. The other thing I wanted to get into, if you guys remember what I was stating earlier, is I cleaned all this residue up. Make sure you clean up the job when you're done, because even some of the power steering fluid from when I released the line, some of that soaked into the rags. Had I not put the rags there, I would have put even more power steering fluid into the timing cover. So just make sure you're doing stuff like that. Now that motor mount there is actually stained. I tried wiping that. It's actually stained by the fluid because it's been leaking so long. So I'm gonna have a conversation with him about replacing this timing belt because I'm very worried about it. The timing cover, I pushed on it. It was leaking out power steering fluid as I was pulling on the bottom of the timing cover. So we're gonna talk to him about that.